President Joe Biden getting a briefing from his Homeland Security team in the wake of the Las Vegas explosion and New Orleans terror attack. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas joins us now. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Please do give us an update at the very top here on what you have learned, especially as we got an update from Las Vegas, where officials there say they have not been able to make a connection between these two attacks. But they haven't ruled anything out or in on that yet. What update can you give us, sir?
Well, thank you very much for having me. The first and foremost, our hearts break for the families and the loved ones of the individuals who lost their lives in New Orleans yesterday. Indeed, the Federal Bureau of Investigation that is leading the investigation both in New Orleans and in Las Vegas, Nevada, has not found any connection between those two incidents. The most important development in the yet still preliminary investigation in New Orleans is the FBI's reassessment that, in fact, this individual, born in the United States, a U.S. citizen, appears to have been acting alone and not in concert with other individuals.
But indeed, the FBI has confirmed that that was 100% an ISIS-inspired attack. So what assurances can you give us that there are not more of these terrorists on the homeland today?
So this does appear to be an individual, a U.S. citizen, radicalized to violence by a foreign terrorist ideology, specifically the ISIS ideology. This is a phenomenon of homegrown violent extremists that we have seen develop and emerge over the past 10 years. The ISIS goal is to have Americans live in fear, and we cannot allow them to succeed in that regard. Our democracy, our way of life must prevail. We will continue to enjoy and flourish in our democratic way of life and not allow an atmosphere of fear to prevail and therefore have ISIS's goal succeed. We will not allow that to occur. Got
it. And just a moment ago, President Biden was speaking, Mr. Secretary. He said ISIS will find no safe harbor here. I just want to put up some numbers on the screen. These are numbers our audience are familiar with. We look at them every day because they do change. And this is the number of encounters, encounters of those coming over the border that are on the terror watch list. 16 since October alone. In all of 2024, 155 coming over the border into the United States. You look at the number in the year 2021, 703 encounters of those coming over the border on the terror watch list. How can we be sure that ISIS won't find a safe harbor here?
Oh, it is our highest responsibility to ensure the safety and security of the American people. And in the service of that responsibility, we screen and vet individuals, and individuals who pose a threat to public safety or national security are prioritized for immigration detention and removal from the United States. And looking at the matter before us, the tragedy in New Orleans yesterday, we are dealing with a United States citizen born in the state of Texas who was radicalized to violence by a foreign terrorist ideology. But let me be clear, whatever the nature of the threat, those who pose a threat to the American people are our highest priority for law enforcement action, as our laws provide, and we enforce and execute those laws every single day. And so many people in our department do so at risk to their own well-being.
There are going to be many who are going to hear you say that and wonder why more hasn't been done to stop people from illegally coming into the country. Mr. Secretary, I looked back at March 12th, and I was reminded when Christopher Wray, heading up the FBI, said that the terror level in this country has reached a whole new level. Worried about those who are here who will inspire acts like, by the way, the one that just happened in New Orleans. He said the terror level threat is higher than before October 7th. So one might wonder why there hasn't been a change in policy that has led to that.
Well, there has been a change in policy. Quite frankly, the number of individuals encountered at our southern border on a daily basis now is lower than it was in 2019, the last year before the pandemic, number one. Number two, Director Wray was speaking of the fact that we have a diverse set of challenges that our country is facing, and I've spoken publicly about this as well. We have the persistent threat of foreign terrorism that really gave rise to the Department of Homeland Security in the first instance after the tragic events of 9/11. We have the individuals already resident in the United States radicalized to violence by a foreign terrorist ideology, or over the last 8 years, what we've seen, anti-government sentiment, false narratives spread online, personal grievances.
Yeah.
And the third major threat vector is adverse nation states, such as the People's Republic of China, Russia, and Iran, that we counter every single day.
I'm pushing through a lot here because we're going to run out of time soon. But as far as what you can reveal to the American public you are doing, I mean, in case in point, in New Orleans, this particular terrorist was pledging his allegiance to ISIS on social media. We have yet to hear about how those videos were eventually taken down, whether that was through the social media network or the federal government. Perhaps you can give us more information on that. But why was this person out there pledging allegiance to ISIS and not known by the government?
Well, there was no public expressions of his allegiance to ISIS except shortly before the tragic events of yesterday. Let me be clear. We work very closely with state and local officers, enforcement officials, to identify individuals who are exhibiting signs of radicalization to violence. We work very closely with residents in communities. We have expressed since the tenure of Secretary Janet Napolitano in the first Obama-Biden administration, see something, say something. If somebody sees something of concern, they need to report it to officials. The responsibility of Homeland Security is a shared responsibility, and we're proud to partner with people across the country.
Real quickly, Mr. Secretary, and again, we do appreciate your time. We just had the incoming National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, on this network saying that he believes that these two events will have a big impact on Trump's confirmation process of his national security picks. What is your reaction to that?
It is always a priority to ensure that qualified nominees, especially in the national security space, are confirmed. Whether or not these individual nominees will be confirmed is a prerogative of the United States Senate under our advice and consent structure, and I defer to the United States Senate for those determinations.
Mr. Secretary, we are up against the top of the hour here, and we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.